Welcome back to the deep dive. This time we're kind of putting on our safety goggles and steel toe boots.
Yeah.
For this one, we're going deep into something especially relevant for all you safety and risk management pros out there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We're talking Chapter 2 of OSHA's Field Operations Manual.
Ah, yes.
That's like the playbook OSHA uses to decide which workplaces to inspect and how to actually carry out those inspections.
Yeah, you can think of it as like a roadmap to understanding how OSHA operates.
Exactly. And for those of you in the field, well, knowing this roadmap can be really valuable.
Incredibly valuable.
So let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
The chapter kicks off with OSHA's mission statement, which is all about making sure every single American worker has safe and healthy working conditions.
Right. Yeah.
They do this through setting and enforcing standards, offering training and education, and providing assistance.
Yeah, especially for smaller businesses.
Yeah, it's interesting how OSHA's approach isn't just about cracking down with enforcement.
Yeah.
They actually want to help businesses understand and meet the regulations, particularly those businesses that might not have tons of resources.
Absolutely. It's more about being partners in safety than just, the enforcers.
Exactly. And that's where the Small Business Regulatory Enforcement Fairness Act, or SBREFA, comes in.
SBREFA.
This act says OSHA has to offer clear guidance and compliance assistance specifically designed for small businesses.
So yeah, instead of small businesses feeling totally overwhelmed by all these regulations,
right,
they can actually reach out to OSHA and get some help.
Get some help.
In understanding and putting those regulations into practice.
I bet that saves a lot of headaches and a lot of stress.
Absolutely. And, this highlights something that a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
OSHA has a ton of resources available to help businesses of all sizes get a handle on those regulations and comply with them.
Yeah.
And that can potentially save companies a lot of time, money, and stress.
Now, speaking of resources and potential cost savings, let's talk about something that I think a lot of companies will be really interested in.
I think so, too.
OSHA's cooperative programs.
This is where things get really interesting. These programs are all about collaboration between OSHA and businesses. And they come with some pretty nice perks.
Perks?
Yeah, one really good example is the Voluntary Protection Programs, or VPP.
VPP, I've heard that's like the gold standard for workplace safety.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
VPP recognizes companies that go above and beyond in their safety efforts, and it really showcases them as models for other companies in their industries. And here's a big incentive for you. Companies that get that VPP status.
Yeah.
They're exempt from those programmed OSHA inspections.
So it's not just about getting a pat on the back.
Right.
There's a real tangible benefit there.
Absolutely. And that benefit can actually have a ripple effect. Think about it for a second. Achieving VPP status can be a huge marketing tool.
Yeah.
It tells your clients, your investors, even potential employees that you take safety really seriously.
Yeah.
And that can seriously boost your company's reputation and maybe even help you attract top talent.
That's a great point. Safety is a competitive advantage. Okay, but what about companies that aren't quite at that VPP level yet?
Well, there's another great option for them, the on-site consultation program. This one's especially valuable for those small to medium-sized businesses because it offers free and confidential safety and health consultations.
Okay, free and confidential.
Yeah, I know.
That definitely got my attention.
And it gets even better.
Okay.
These consultations are done by qualified safety professionals who can help identify hazards in your workplace, suggest solutions, and even provide some training.
Wow.
All about the fear of citations or penalties.
That's incredible. That's a really valuable resource, especially for businesses that might not have that internal expertise or the resources to deal with these safety issues on their own.
Exactly. It levels the playing field in a sense and gives smaller companies access to that same level of support as the larger ones.
That's great. Now, I know there are a couple other cooperative programs worth mentioning.
Yeah.
SHARP and pre-SHARP, right?
Yes. The Safety and Health Achievement Recognition Program, or SHARP, recognizes those small and medium-sized businesses that have developed and actually implemented strong safety programs.
Okay.
And this is often through participating in that on-site consultation program. And then pre-SHARP, that's for businesses that are actively working towards that SHARP recognition.
Okay. So what's the big benefit there?
Well, both programs can potentially exempt companies from those programmed OSHA inspections.
Okay.
Think of it as like a stepping stone towards VPP. Even if a company isn't quite at that VPP level just yet, these programs offer recognition and that chance to avoid routine inspections.
So even if VPP isn't on the horizon right now, there are still ways to get recognized and get some real benefits.
Yeah.
by engaging with OSHA proactively.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've talked about how OSHA wants to actually work with companies, especially smaller ones, to create safer workplaces. But we also have to talk about the enforcement side of things.
Right, of course. And that's where understanding OSHA's inspection priorities comes in. They have a very clear system for figuring out which workplaces to inspect and when.
Right. It's all about prioritizing the most serious situations first.
Exactly. Imminent danger situations. Those are at the very top of the list.
Yeah?
And those demand immediate action.
Of course.
Next, you have fatality and catastrophe investigations, which unfortunately speak for themselves in terms of urgency.
Right. Those situations need immediate attention.
Absolutely. Then you've got complaints and referrals. OSHA takes these very seriously. So if someone files a complaint or a referral about a potential hazard, you can be sure OSHA is going to thoroughly investigate it.
So if there's a concern out there, it's really important to report it through those proper channels.
Definitely.
Now, even if a company has a really strong safety program in place, they could still get an inspection, based on a complaint.
Oh, absolutely. It's not a foolproof shield, but having a solid safety program and a history of addressing concerns, that can really help during an inspection.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got imminent danger fatalities, complaints, and referrals. What's next on that priority list?
Finally, you have programmed inspections. These are the more routine inspections that OSHA does based on their scheduling plans. They usually target specific industries or workplaces that have a history of safety problems.
Got it. So if a company works in what's considered a high-hazard industry, or they've had a bunch of violations in the past, they can expect those programmed inspections to happen more often.
Exactly. It's about focusing resources where the risks are higher.
And then there's one more type, right?
Yes.
Something about program-related.
Program-related inspections.
Yeah.
These are similar to unprogrammed related inspections in that they can happen at multi-employer work sites.
Okay.
But instead of being triggered by an existing unprogrammed inspection, they're initiated as part of a planned inspection program.
So give me an example. I'm having a little trouble picturing this one.
Sure. Let's imagine OSHA decides to really focus on fall protection in the construction industry.
Okay.
They could choose a construction site and do programmed inspections of all the employers working there.
Wow.
Regardless of whether there have been any complaints or incidents.
So it's like a sweep of the entire site focused on a particular hazard.
Exactly. A way to make sure everyone is following the rules, even if there haven't been any red flags yet.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got these four main types of inspections.
Yeah.
Unprogrammed, unprogrammed related, programmed, and program related. Knowing the difference can really help you understand why OSHA might be at your door.
Absolutely. It's about awareness and preparation. And speaking of preparation, let's go back to those cooperative programs we were talking about earlier.
Oh, right. Those VPP, SHARP, and on-site consultation programs.
Right.
We talked about how they offer resources and those potential exemptions.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there's more to it.
There is participating in these programs shows OSHA that you're committed to safety, and they recognize and reward that commitment. And it can literally change how they interact with your company.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Let's start with VPP. We said that VPP participants are exempt from those programmed inspections.
Right, they're basically off OSHA's routine inspection list.
Exactly, because they've already shown how dedicated they are to safety. But it's really important to note that VPP is not like a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Right.
VPP sites can still be inspected if there's an imminent danger, a fatality or catastrophe, or a formal complaint.
Okay, so it's not a guarantee to avoid all inspections.
Right.
But it reduces the chances of those routine ones.
For sure.
That makes sense. What about the other programs?
Well, even during that application process for VPP, a company can get something called an inspection deferral.
An inspection deferral, what's that?
It means OSHA will postpone any planned inspections while they review that VTP application. And this deferral can start as early as 75 days before the on-site evaluation for VPP.
So there's an incentive to apply early and get that deferral going.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the on-site consultation program? Does that offer anything similar?
It does. Participating in the on-site consultation program can get you a 90-day deferral of those programmed inspections.
So even if a company isn't going for that VPP status, they can still get a little break.
Yeah, a temporary break.
From those routine inspections by working with OSHA's consultants.
That's right.
That's a pretty good deal, especially for those companies that might need a little extra guidance.
Exactly. It gives them a bit of breathing room to address any potential hazards they found during that consultation.
Right.
But you got to remember that 90-day deferral, that's the maximum OSHA, might decide to do an inspection sooner.
Okay.
especially if they think the workplace is high risk.
Right. So it's not a foolproof guarantee,
Yeah,
but it's still a valuable benefit.
absolutely. What about SHARP? Does that program have any impact on inspections?
Yeah. How does...
Absolutely. It does. Similar to VPP, SHARP participants are exempt from those programmed inspections.
Okay.
They've shown that high level of commitment to safety, and OSHA recognizes that with this exemption.
So both VPP and SHARP offer that same level of inspection relief.
Exactly. Now, you remember we talked about pre-SHARP,
Uh-huh.
which is for companies working towards that SHARP recognition.
Yeah.
They can also get a deferral from programmed inspections.
Okay.
But it's not as simple as those VPP or SHARP exemptions.
Oh, okay.
The deferral period for pre-SHARP, that's determined by the state consultation program manager.
Okay.
And it can't be longer than 18 months from the last hazard correction due date.
So it's a bit more nuanced, but still a potential advantage for companies that are working towards that full SHARP recognition.
Exactly. Now, it's super important to remember that even with these exemptions and deferrals,
Yeah.
certain situations can still trigger an OSHA inspection.
Like what?
Like imminent dangers, fatalities, formal complaints. Those will always mean an inspection no matter what.
Regardless of the company's participation in those programs.
Yeah, because those are the times when immediate action is needed and
Right.
OSHA can't wait.
Okay. But overall, participating in these programs shows that you're being proactive about safety, which can really help build a more collaborative relationship with OSHA
Exactly.
and potentially mean fewer disruptions from inspections.
Right.
It seems like a win-win.
It is.
Companies get the support and those potential cost savings, and OSHA can really focus their resources on the workplaces that might need more attention.
For sure. Okay, before we move on, there's one more program I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
The OSHA Strategic Partnership Program, or OSPP.
Ah, yes. OSPP. This program is a little different from the others we've talked about.
It is. It doesn't offer those same inspection benefits as VPP SHARP or the consultation program.
So no exemptions or deferrals for OSPP participants.
Not anymore. It used to be that it could get you inspection deferrals or those limited scope inspections, but not anymore.
Interesting. So what's the point of taking part in OSPP then?
OSPP is more about building these long-term partnerships with OSHA
Okay.
to address specific safety and health concerns within an industry or a sector.
Right.
It's not so much about avoiding inspections. It's more about working together to come up with solutions and share best practices.
Okay. So the different kind of relationship.
Yeah.
Focus on that proactive problem solving
Exactly.
rather than the reactive enforcement.
Right. It's about working together to raise the bar for safety across a whole industry.
I like that. It's a good reminder that safety isn't just about following the rules. It's about continuously improving and collaborating.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of exceptions in specific situations,
Yeah.
we talked about how there are some cases where OSHA's enforcement power is limited.
Right, like those small farming operations.
Yeah.
Small businesses and industries that aren't considered high hazard.
Right.
And those workplaces that are already regulated by a different federal agency.
Exactly. And there are a few other scenarios worth mentioning. For example, OSHA's jurisdiction over the U.S. Postal Service, that's a bit unique.
How so?
Well, the Postal Service is technically covered by the Occupational Safety and Health Act.
Yeah.
But all the states that have their own OSHA-approved plans have chosen not to cover it.
So that means federal OSHA has jurisdiction over the Postal Service across the country.
That's right. So even in states with their own OSHA plans, it's the federal OSHA that's responsible for inspecting Postal Service facilities.
Okay, that's interesting. It sounds like a jurisdictional quirk. What about home-based workplaces? Are those covered by OSHA?
Generally, OSHA won't inspect those home offices where employees are doing typical office work, so you don't have to worry about an inspector popping up at your door
Okay.
just because you got a filing cabinet and a printer.
That's a relief. But what about other types of home-based businesses? Like if someone is running a manufacturing operation out of their garage?
That's a different story. OSHA can definitely inspect those types of home-based work sites, especially if they get a complaint or a referral about a serious safety hazard.
So if you're running a metal fabrication shop in your basement, you might want to be extra careful.
Definitely. And remember, even in situations where OSHA's authority is limited,
Yeah.
they can still investigate those serious incidents like fatalities.
So no one is completely off the hook when it comes to workplace safety,
Exactly.
no matter their industry or location.
OSHA's mission is to protect all workers, and they have the authority to investigate any situation where worker safety is at risk.
Okay, so we've talked about the different types of inspections, those programs that can influence those inspections, and some of the exceptions to OSHA's authority. Now I think it's time to dig into what actually happens during an OSHA inspection. What can companies expect when that inspector shows up?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's walk through that scenario.
All right.
An OSHA inspector arrives at your workplace.
Here they come.
What's the first thing they do?
Well, before they just barge in, they're going to start by showing you their credentials, making it clear who they are and why they're there.
Okay, so they're not just going to like flash a badge and start demanding access.
Not at all. They'll explain why they're there.
Okay.
Whether it's a programmed inspection, an unprogrammed inspection triggered by a complaint, or something else entirely.
Right.
And they'll even give you a copy of the complaint if that's what started the whole thing.
So transparency from the get-go. I like that.
Yeah.
So once you understand why they're there,
Yeah.
what happens next?
The inspector will then ask to have an opening conference.
Okay.
This is a really important step.
So I imagine this is where they lay out the game plan, right?
Exactly. They'll describe what the inspection will cover, including the areas they plan to inspect, the documents they'll want to look at,
Right.
and the employees they might want to talk to. It's a chance for the company to get a clear idea of what's going to happen.
And I'm guessing it's also a good time for the company to ask any questions
Absolutely.
and clarify anything that might be concerning them.
The opening conference should be a conversation. It's about setting expectations and making sure everyone is on the same page.
Okay. So open communication is key right from the start.
Got it.
So once that opening conference is over, what's next?
Then comes the walk-around inspection. This is where it gets real.
Okay.
The inspector will actually go out into the workplace and start looking for potential hazards.
So they're looking for anything that could put workers' safety or health at risk.
Exactly. They'll be checking things like machine guarding, electrical safety, fall protection, hazard communication.
Right.
Really anything that falls under what OSHA covers.
And it's not just about checking things off a list, right?
Oh.
They're actually watching how work is being done.
Got it. They'll be observing work practices, talking to employees, and getting a sense of the overall safety culture of the workplace.
Okay.
It's about seeing how safety is built into the daily work, not just if certain procedures are written down somewhere.
Okay, so it's a thorough assessment. What happens if during that walk around, the inspector sees something that they think is a violation?
Typically, they'll point it out to someone from the company and explain why they see it as a violation.
So they're not just going to hit you with a citation without giving you a chance to understand what's wrong.
Nope. Remember, OSHA's main goal is to get everyone following the rules and improve workplace safety.
Okay.
They want to work with companies, not against them.
That's good. So there's that element of education and collaboration throughout the whole inspection process.
Absolutely. Now, if the inspector decides that there's been a violation, they'll document it
Okay.
and gather any evidence they need, like pictures or measurements.
Right. So they're putting together all the information they need to support their findings.
Yep. You could say they're building a case. They need to be able to back up any citations they might issue.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So the walk around is finished. The inspector has all their notes and their evidence. What happens then?
They'll have a closing conference. That's where they'll sit down with people from the company again
Okay.
and go over everything they found.
So it's like a debriefing
Yeah.
where they lay it all out.
Exactly. The inspector will talk about any possible violations they saw, discuss the OSHA standards that apply,
Right.
and explain the process for citations and potential penalties.
So this is where things could potentially get a little more serious.
Potentially. But even then, it's about finding solutions and making sure everyone is following the rules. It's not about punishing companies.
Right.
It's about making sure hazards are fixed and workers are safe.
So even if they issue citations, the ultimate goal is a safer workplace.
Absolutely. Now, after the closing conference, the inspector will write up a formal report with all their findings.
And that report is going to decide whether any citations are actually issued.
Right. The report will detail any violations they found, the relevant OSHA standards, and any proposed penalties. And if the inspector saw some serious hazards, they might even issue what's called a hazard alert letter, even if they don't give out any citations.
So even if you don't get a formal citation, you might still get a heads up that there are some issues to fix.
Exactly. It's OSHA's way of pointing out potential problems without taking that formal enforcement action.
It gets sense. So that report is a really important document.
Yes.
It lays out the results of the whole inspection and any action that needs to be taken.
It's crucial for companies to really study that report.
Right.
Make sure they understand everything in it and know their rights.
Right.
They can actually fight citations or penalties if they don't agree with what the inspector said.
So it's not necessarily the final word. There's a process for appealing and maybe resolving disputes.
Exactly. Companies have a limited amount of time to file something called a notice of contest.
Oh, okay.
if they want to challenge any part of the citation.
Right.
So they need to act quickly and maybe even get a lawyer involved if they need to.
Wow, that's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
We've covered the whole inspection process.
We have.
From the inspector arriving to the possibility of getting citations and even how to challenge those citations. Understanding this whole process seems really important for anyone who works in safety.
I agree. Knowing how OSHA works, what to expect during an inspection, and what your rights and responsibilities are as an employer,
Right.
that can make a big difference in making sure the whole process is smoother and the workplace is safer.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Chapter 2 of OSHA's Field Operations Manual.
We covered a lot.
We did. We talked about OSHA's mission, those different cooperative programs they have, the different types of inspections they do,
Yeah,
and the whole process of an inspection.
it's a lot.
It is. We also talked about how important it is to be proactive about safety management, to participate in those cooperative programs, and understand your rights as an employer.
All important stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hopefully this deep dive has given you a much clearer understanding of how OSHA operates
Yeah.
and all the tools you need to create a really safe workplace. And remember, guys, prioritizing safety isn't just about avoiding those citations.
Yep.
It's about protecting your most valuable asset, your employees.
Well said. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for coming along with us on this journey into the world of OSHA.
Absolutely.
And remember, safety should be a constant commitment,
Yeah.
not just a reaction to an inspection.
Very well said. Until next time, stay safe out there.
You too. They're usually prompted by, those urgent situations we were just talking about, imminent dangers, fatalities, complaints, referrals.
Yeah, those situations.
They require OSHA to act fast and often unexpectedly.
Okay. So if like a worker reports a really serious safety hazard, or if there's an accident, that would probably trigger an unprogrammed inspection.
Yeah, exactly.
But what about situations where you have multiple companies working at the same site?
Oh, yeah.
Like on a big construction project.
Yeah.
How does OSHA handle that?
That's where things can get a little tricky.
Okay.
Those types of workplaces, they're called multi-employer work sites, and they can sometimes lead to a different kind of inspection,
Oh, okay.
an unprogrammed related inspection.
Unprogrammed related, so it's unplanned,
Right.
but it's connected to something else.
Yes, exactly. Let's say OSHA is already doing an unprogrammed inspection at a construction site
Oh,
because of a complaint about scaffolding.
Mm-hmm.
And during that inspection, they notice another company, let's say an electrical contractor,
Oh.
doing some work that looks kind of risky.
Okay.
Even though the original inspection wasn't about that electrical contractor,
Right.
OSHA could decide to include them in their investigation.
So even if your company wasn't the reason for the inspection in the first place,
Yeah.
you could still end up being looked at if you're working on one of those multi-employer work sites.
Exactly. It's like a chain reaction.
Okay. And that's why it's so important for companies working in those environments
Yeah,
to be really careful about their safety practices.
absolutely. You never know when OSHA might be watching, even if they weren't focused on your company at first.
Okay, so we've got those unprogrammed inspections and the unprogrammed related inspections. What else is there?
Well, then you have programmed inspections. These are those routine inspections that OSHA does based on their schedule.
Okay.
And they usually focus on certain industries or workplaces that have had some safety issues in the past.
Right. So if a company works in an industry that's known to be hazardous,
Yeah.
or if they've had a lot of violations before,
Uh-huh.
they can probably expect more of those programmed inspections.
Exactly. It's all about putting their resources where the risks seem to be higher.
Makes sense. And then there's one more type, right?
Yeah.
Something about program related.
Program-related inspections.
Yeah.
Yep. These are kind of like unprogrammed related inspections.
Sure.
They can happen at those multi-employer work sites,
Mm-hmm.
but instead of being started because of another unprogrammed inspection,
Right.
they're part of a planned inspection program.
Okay, can you give me an example? I'm not really picturing this one.
Sure. Imagine OSHA decides they want to focus on fall protection in the construction industry.
Okay, focusing on fall protection.
Yeah. They could pick a construction site
Right.
and decide to inspect every single employer working there,
Wow.
no matter if they've had any complaints or incidents or not.
So it's like they're sweeping through the whole site,
Yeah,
focused on one specific hazard or safety standard.
exactly. It's a way to make sure everybody's doing things the right way,
Yeah.
even if there haven't been any problems yet.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got these four main types of inspections.
Right.
Unprogrammed related, programmed, and program related.
Right.
And knowing the difference between them can really help you figure out why OSHA might be showing up at your door.
Exactly. It's about, Awareness and preparation. And, speaking of preparation,
Yeah.
let's go back to those cooperative programs we were talking about.
Oh, right. Those VPP, SHARP, and on-site consultation programs.
Yeah, they can actually have a big impact on how OSHA decides to do inspections.
Oh, right.
We talked about how they can help with resources and exemptions.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it goes beyond that.
It does.
Yeah.
When you participate in these programs, it shows OSHA that you're serious about safety.
Okay.
And they really appreciate that, and they reward it.
Okay.
It can actually change how they work with your company.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Let's start with VPP. Remember we said that VPP participants are exempt from those routine programmed inspections.
Right. They're basically off the list for those regular inspections.
Exactly, because they've already proven that they're dedicated to safety.
Right.
But it's really important to remember that VPP isn't a free pass.
Right.
VPP sites can still get inspected if there's a really dangerous situation.
Like an imminent danger.
Right. Or a fatality, a catastrophe, or a formal complaint.
Okay, so it doesn't mean you'll never get inspected.
Right.
But it definitely makes those routine ones less likely.
For sure.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the other programs?
Well, even while a company's applying for VPP,
they can get what's called an inspection deferral.
An inspection deferral, what's that?
It means OSHA will hold off on any planned inspections while they're reviewing that VPP application.
Okay.
And this deferral can start as early as 75 days before that on-site evaluation for VPP.
So it pays to apply early.
Yeah.
And get that deferral process started.
Exactly.
Smart. What about the on-site consultation program? Does that have any similar benefits?
It does. If you participate in the on-site consultation program, you can get a 90-day deferral of those routine inspections.
So even if a company isn't aiming for that VPP status,
right,
they can still get a temporary break from those routine inspections by working with those OSHA consultants.
That's right.
That's a pretty sweet deal, especially for companies that might need a little extra help.
Absolutely. It gives them some time to address any potential problems they found during the consultation.
Yeah.
But remember that 90-day deferral? That's the maximum.
Okay.
OSHA could decide to come sooner,
right,
especially if they think there's a high risk.
So it's not a guarantee.
Right.
But it's still a good perk.
Definitely. Now, how about SHARP? Does that program affect inspections at all?
Yeah. How does SHARP work with inspections?
Just like VPP, SHARP participants are exempt from those routine programmed inspections.
Right.
They've demonstrated a strong commitment to safety.
Yeah.
And OSHA recognizes that by giving them this exemption.
So VPP and SHARP both offer that same level of relief from inspections.
Exactly. Now remember, pre-SHARP,
for companies working towards that SHARP recognition.
Yeah, they can get a deferral from those routine inspections too.
Okay.
But it's not as straightforward as the VPP or SHARP exemptions.
Oh, okay.
The length of the deferral for pre-SHARP,
right,
that's up to the state consultation program manager.
Okay.
And it can't be longer than 18 months from the date that last hazard correction was due.
So it's a bit more complicated, but still a possible benefit for companies working towards that full SHARP recognition.
Exactly. Now, it's really important to remember, even with these exemptions and deferrals, some situations will always mean an OSHA inspection.
Right.
Imminent dangers, fatalities, formal complaints, those always require an inspection.
Yeah, those are the urgent situations, no matter what.
No matter if a company is in those programs or not.
Okay.
Because those are the times when you need to act fast.
Right.
And OSHA can't wait.
But generally speaking, being part of these programs shows that you're taking safety seriously.
Right.
And that can help you build a better relationship with OSHA.
For sure.
And maybe have fewer inspections overall.
It's a win-win situation.
It is. Companies get the support and potentially save some money. And OSHA can focus on the workplaces that might need more help.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on, there's one more program I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
The OSHA Strategic Partnership Program, or OSPP.
OSPP. This program is a bit different from the others we've talked about.
It is. It doesn't offer those same inspection benefits, like VPP SHARP or the consultation program.
So no exemptions or deferrals if you're in OSPP.
Not anymore. In the past, it could have led to inspection deferrals or those limited scope inspections, but not anymore.
So why would a company want to be part of OSPP then?
OSPP is more about creating these long-term partnerships with OSHA to tackle specific safety and health concerns within an industry or a whole sector.
Got it.
It's not so much about avoiding inspections. It's more about working together to find solutions and share those best practices.
Okay, so it's a different kind of relationship.
Yeah.
It's more about being proactive and finding solutions.
Exactly.
Than reacting to enforcement.
Right. It's about working together to make safety better across an entire industry.
Oh, I like that. It reminds me that safety isn't just about following the rules.
Yeah.
It's about always trying to improve and working together.
Absolutely. Now, we were talking about exceptions in specific situations.
Right.
And how OSHA's authority is limited in some cases.
Yeah, like small farms.
Right.
Businesses in those low-hazard industries.
Yeah.
And workplaces that are already covered by a different federal agency.
Exactly. There are a few more examples worth mentioning.
Okay, like what?
OSHA's jurisdiction over the U.S. Postal Service. It's a little unique.
How so?
The Postal Service is technically covered by the Occupational Safety and Health Act.
Okay.
But every state with its own OSHA-approved plan has decided not to cover the Postal Service.
Oh, interesting.
So federal OSHA is in charge of the Postal Service across the whole country.
Even in states that have their own OSHA plans.
That's right. So federal OSHA is responsible for inspecting those Postal Service facilities.
Wow. That's a bit of a jurisdictional quirk.
Yeah.
What about workplaces that are based in someone's home?
Oh, those home-based work sites.
Yeah? Are those covered by OSHA?
Generally, OSHA won't inspect home offices where people are doing typical office work.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about an inspector showing up.
Right.
Just because you have a filing cabinet and a printer in your house.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
What if someone has a different type of home-based business? Like what if they're running a factory out of their garage?
That's different. OSHA can definitely inspect those kinds of home-based work sites, especially if someone complains or reports a serious hazard.
So if you're doing something like metal fabrication in your basement,
Right.
you better be extra careful.
Definitely. And remember, even in those situations where OSHA might not have as much authority,
Yeah.
they can still investigate serious incidents like fatalities.
So no one is totally off the hook when it comes to workplace safety?
Nope.
Doesn't matter what industry you're in or where you're located?
OSHA's mission is to keep all workers safe.
Right.
And they have the power to investigate any situation where workers might be at risk.
Okay, so we've talked about all the different types of inspections, the programs that can affect those inspections,
Right.
and even some of the limits to OSHA's authority. Now, I think it's time to get into the details of what actually happens during an OSHA inspection. What should companies expect when that inspector shows up at their door?
Yeah, let's break it down.
Okay, so let's walk through it. An OSHA inspector shows up at your workplace.
Yeah.
What's the first thing they're going to do?
Well, the first thing is they're going to show you their credentials. They'll let you know who they are and why they're there.
Okay, so no bursting through the doors.
No bursting through the doors. They'll explain the reason for the inspection. Whether it's a programmed inspection, an unprogrammed inspection because of a complaint, or something else entirely.
Got it.
And they'll give you a copy of the complaint if that's what started it all.
Okay, so they're being pretty transparent right from the beginning.
Absolutely.
I like that. So once you know why they're there, what happens next?
Well, then they'll ask to have what's called an opening conference.
An opening conference?
Yeah, this is a really important part.
Okay, so I imagine this is where they kind of lay out the plan for the inspection.
Exactly. They'll outline everything that's going to be covered, the areas they want to inspect, the documents they'll need to look at, and any employees they might want to interview.
Oh?
It's a chance for the company to really understand what to expect.
And I'm guessing it's also a chance for the company to ask questions.
Oh, absolutely.
And make sure everything is clear.
It's a two-way street. That opening conference should really be a conversation.
Yeah.
It's about setting those expectations and making sure everyone is on the same page.
Okay, so good communication is key right from the start.
Definitely.
Got it. So once that opening conference is done, what happens then?
Well, then the walk-around inspection happens.
The walk around.
Yeah. This is where things get real. This is where the inspector will actually go into the workplace and start looking for anything that could be a hazard.
So they're basically looking for anything that might put a worker's safety or health in danger.
Exactly. They'll check things like machine guarding, electrical safety, fall protection hazard communication.
Right, all the important stuff.
Yeah, pretty much everything that falls under OSHA's rules.
And it's not just about, checking off boxes on a list, right?
No, not at all.
They're also watching how people are actually working.
Exactly. They'll be watching how people do their jobs, talking to employees, and getting a sense of how safety is handled in the workplace.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how safety is a part of everyday work, not just whether certain procedures are written down somewhere.
Okay, so it's pretty thorough assessment. What happens if during that walk around, the inspector finds something they think is a violation?
Well, usually they'll point it out to someone from the company.
Okay.
And they'll explain why they think it's a violation.
So they're not just going to issue a citation right away without giving the company a chance to understand what's wrong.
Nope.
Remember, OSHA's main goal is to make sure everyone is following the rules and to improve workplace safety.
Right.
They want to work with companies to make things better.
That's good to know. So there's a real focus on education and working together during the inspection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, if the inspector decides that there has been a violation, they'll document it and gather any evidence they need, like photographs or measurements.
So they're essentially building a case, right? They need to be able to support any citations they might give out.
Exactly. They need to be able to justify those citations.
Okay, that makes sense. So the walk around is done. The inspector has taken their notes and gathered their evidence. What's the next step?
Well, then they have what's called a closing conference.
A closing conference.
Yeah, they'll sit down with company representatives again and go over everything they found.
So it's kind of like a final debrief?
Yeah, exactly. They'll talk about any potential violations. They saw what OSHA standards apply.
Right.
And explain how the citation process works and any potential penalties.
Okay, so this is where it could get a little more serious.
Potentially. But the focus is still on finding solutions and making sure things are done right. It's not about trying to punish anyone.
Okay.
It's about fixing any hazards and keeping people safe.
So even if the company gets a citation, the ultimate goal is to have a safer workplace.
Exactly. Now, after that closing conference, the inspector will write a formal report with all their findings.
And that report will decide whether any citations are actually issued.
Exactly. It will describe all the violations they found, the OSHA standards that apply, and any penalties they might propose. And if they found any serious hazards, they might even issue what's called a hazard alert letter.
A hazard alert letter?
Yeah, even if they don't give any citations.
So even if you don't get an official citation, you might still get a warning that there are things that need to be fixed.
Right. It's a way for OSHA to flag those potential problems without having to take formal action.
Okay, that makes sense. So that report is a really important document.
It is.
It summarizes the inspection and what needs to happen next.
It's really crucial for companies to carefully review that report.
Yeah.
Make sure they understand everything it says and that they know their rights.
They're right.
Yeah, they have the right to challenge those citations or penalties if they don't agree with the inspector.
So it's not necessarily the end of the story.
Right. There's a process to appeal and potentially work things out.
So what would a company need to do if they wanted to appeal?
They have a limited amount of time to file something called a notice of contest.
A notice of contest?
Yeah, if they want to challenge any part of that citation, so they need to act fast. And if they need to, they should get a lawyer involved.
Wow, that's a lot of information. We've gone through that whole inspection process from start to finish.
They sure have.
From the inspector arriving to the possibility of getting citations and even how to challenge them.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But understanding this whole process seems incredibly important for anyone working in safety.
Absolutely. It can really make a difference in how smoothly the whole thing goes and ultimately how safe the workplace is.
Absolutely. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Chapter 2 of OSHA's Field Operations Manual.
Wow, we covered a lot of ground.
We talked about OSHA's mission, all those cooperative programs, the different types of inspections, and that whole inspection process itself.
We even touched on how companies can challenge those citations.
We did. And I think the big takeaway here is that being proactive about safety is so important.
It really is.
And understanding how OSHA operates can make a huge difference for everyone.
Absolutely. Remember, folks, a safe workplace is a productive workplace.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of OSHA. And remember, safety first, always.
Always.